Welcome, everybody. I think we've got everybody who was in the lobby is in now. So welcome today to our Mission Impossible Sustainability webinar. We will be starting shortly. The webinar is going to start at 2:01. So we've got just a few minutes here where you get to look at our smiling faces, and we'll wait for folks to make their way in. We're going to be having a live transcript of this, so if you need closed captioning or anything, go ahead and turn that on. I believe it'll be available, and the webinar will be recorded. We're recording now, so that will be there. You're not expected to have your cameras on or anything, but if you do choose to do that, just know that we are making a recording today. All righty, we'll just give folks a few more minutes to get in here. All right, so we're right at 2 o'clock. We're waiting for folks to get in. We'll go ahead and start in one more minute.
We need some fun waiting music.
That's true. Maybe we should. Let's see. All righty. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Mission Impossible Sustainability and Transportation, our webinar today. My name is Patricia Crane. I'm the Commuter Program Specialist. I work with GoPerks and Youth GoPass, and I'm today's host. Thank you to everyone who's joined us, with a special thank you to our regional chambers, business membership organizations, and our community members that helped spread the word about this webinar. Your assistance has helped make this group remarkably diverse and a true representation of our community. We're going to go on some housekeeping here. Today's session is being recorded, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll share the recording usually within 24 to 48 hours. Attendees will be muted during the presentation. Attendees are encouraged to ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A button located in the Zoom toolbar. When we transition to the question and answer portion of today's webinar, attendees are welcome to ask questions with their cameras on if you'd like, but if you'd like to ask your question in person, go ahead and indicate that when you post it in the Q&A. We have enabled live transcription services as well as subtitles. Subtitles can be shown by accessing the live transcript option in your Zoom toolbar. Alrighty, with that out of the way, we'll go on to a little bit about us. Today's topic speaks to the core purpose of our region's Transportation Demand Management, or TDM program, sustainability, both the impact of our travel choices and the ability to turn a decision into a habit and then a way of life. Our program here at GoTriangle is a regional partnership with like-minded organizations throughout the region seeking to reduce single occupancy travel. That's driving alone in your car. The programming offers transportation expertise and complementary assistance to businesses, residential communities, and commercial properties to give them a competitive edge and combat air pollution and congestion mitigation. So together we support over 160 employees in the region, representing 150,000 Triangle commuters. These services and programs have significant impacts on commuting patterns, traffic congestion, personal health, and air quality in the Triangle. Our grant-funded services, programs, and materials are provided through a partnership of municipalities and public transportation agencies. You can visit gotriangle.org/employer services to learn more about what we do. And we're going to post that in the chat. And to introduce today's speaker as the sustainability manager for Durham County, Tobin Freid assists county employees, businesses, and residents in implementing environmentally sustainable practices, including making facilities more efficient, reducing solid waste, and conserving water. Tobin's main responsibilities focus on implementing Durham County's greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan and their renewable energy plan. All righty, so we're going to go ahead and turn things over to Tobin. Welcome.
Thank you very much and welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you to share some information about Durham County environmental impacts of transportation choices. I'm going to share my screen and hope for the best. All right, hopefully you can all see that. Okay, so get started. So first I want to talk about climate change, and I know this is a topic a lot of people hear about. There are lots of news articles about it. People talk about climate change, and a lot of people don't actually know really what that all means. So I just very briefly want to remind everyone what climate change is and how it happens so that we can set the tone for the rest of the talk today. So Earth has an atmosphere. It's made up of different kinds of gases, lots of different gases. And energy from the sun comes towards the Earth. And some of it bounces back out into space. And some of it gets trapped by those gases. And that's a good thing. It's really important. We wouldn't have life on Earth if we didn't have those gases trapping some of that heat. It helps to keep temperatures from fluctuating, hundreds of degrees during night and day. It powers our weather patterns with the atmosphere and the jet stream. It makes the water circulation in the oceans happen, which transfers heat from the equator up to the northern and southern latitudes. Lots of good things about the atmosphere trapping gases, but like anything, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And when we get too many of those gases in our atmosphere, too much of that energy is trapped and all those systems go haywire. And that's where we run into a lot of problems with ocean levels rising and bigger heat, all sorts of things. I'm going to talk about that. So let's just go to the next slide. Okay, so this is from North Carolina, our greenhouse gas inventory. And you can see here that transportation is actually the largest emission sector in North Carolina, even bigger than all the electricity that's generated. So this is an issue that is really important for a lot of reasons, and climate change is certainly one of them. And you can see from this graph that the VMT stands for vehicle miles traveled, and that is significantly higher in North Carolina than the US average. And that's due to a lot of different factors. A lot has to do with the rural character of North Carolina and also lack of major train systems in our major cities and different factors, but it really is significant how many more vehicle miles traveled we have in North Carolina than the rest of the country. And on-road light-duty vehicles, which just means cars we drive on the road to get us around, are 72% of the transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions. So of all of the emissions, just us driving around in our cars is a very significant part of that. So Durham has a greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan. We were the first community in all of North Carolina to adopt a plan. This was back in 2007. And it set a goal for county operations, city operations to reduce our emissions by 50% from 2005 levels by 2030. 2030 seemed like a long time into the future back in 2007, and it's just around the corner now. And it also has goals for our community, and that's a 30% reduction from 2005 by 2030. So my position was created to implement this plan and, well, I should say oversee implementation. Implementation involves a lot of different departments and organizations and every individual and business in Durham to really make sure that we reach our goals. So let's see how we're doing. So the most recent data that is available is from 2018. And you can see from the top graph that we are making progress. We're in the downward trend, but we're not quite on target to meet our goals. And then the bottom graph, you can see the percentage of each sector, and that transportation slice is rather large. It is decreasing slightly, and so are all the others except for industrial, which crept up a little in 2018. So let's talk a bit about what the impacts are of climate change in Durham. We've already mentioned that transportation is a major contributor to those gases. And what does that mean for us? So in 2018, we partnered with other communities in the Triangle to do an assessment and say, what are the impacts of climate change in our region, in the Triangle region? And there were definitely a lot of impacts. The four major ones are flooding, and you may even have noticed this, I would say in the last 5 to 8 years or so, more flooding. We've had just a lot of storms where a whole bunch of water gets dumped all at once. And also hurricanes coming through and stalling over the area, whether it's right in Durham or even just in North Carolina, that is causing issues. It closes down our streets. It makes it difficult for people to get to work or to medical appointments or for emergency vehicles to get through. Flooding also can destroy property. It can create issues with mold, which of course have human health consequences to it. Also, mosquitoes and other kinds of pests that, like wet areas or standing water, those grow exponentially when we have flooding events. Another big issue is heat, and this is another one that you are experiencing already. So these are not just issues into the future, but really that we're experiencing right now. So we're seeing heat earlier in the year, we're seeing heat later in the year, and we're seeing more extremes where the temperatures are very high or they're high for a very long time. This is a big problem for a lot of reasons. Of course, extreme heat can affect our infrastructure, our roads, our electrical wires are less efficient when they're overheated, but of course, human health is a big factor for this as well. So our bodies don't function as well when they're really hot, and that can cause problems for people who already have issues like hypertension or asthma, who are elderly or they're very young, people who are experiencing homelessness, people who don't have air conditioning or can't afford to run their air conditioning. So a lot of different groups, people who have to work outside, people who are who have to spend a lot of time walking outside or standing outside. So it has a lot of health impacts for those groups. Wildfires is another one of the major impacts. I'll admit this one kind of surprised a lot of us. We do live in an area that's pretty heavily forested. A lot of businesses and homes live right or exist right up next to those forests. So certainly there's an immediate concern about wildfires. As we have more extreme heat and we have more pests and we have more drought, these forests are more susceptible to wildfires. But even if those wildfires are not right near us, smoke can travel very, very far. So we can have fires in neighboring counties. We can have fires up in the mountains of North Carolina, even fires out west. That smoke still travels over here and can affect our air quality. And we've seen that recently in the last few years as well. And then the last big impact is drought. And that has implications, of course, for us to be able to have good, healthy, clean water to drink and enjoy. It has issues for industry that uses water, for the power sector that uses water. Also, when you have dry lake beds like this, or even just dry areas, dust is an issue that can have issues for people with their respiratory systems. So these are all impacts that we're already seeing. And I mentioned some of the issues about people who are most vulnerable. Part of what we have done is look at who are these, which areas are more vulnerable, which populations are more vulnerable. And we looked at particularly redlined communities. So these are areas that historically have faced racism, and that was in many forms, but one of them was redlining. We're back in the 30s and somewhat in the 40s, where there was a systematic disinvestment in these areas. So there weren't, people couldn't get loans, they couldn't buy houses, the city didn't invest in these areas as well. So that has implications even until now. And so what this graph is showing is for these different factors that influence people's vulnerability to these climate risks, poverty, impervious surface, which are surfaces like roads that water can't get down, so that impacts flooding, canopy cover, which is tree cover, rental, which has to do with how stable the community is and whether people have the resources to fix their homes if there is mold, things like that, percentage of people who don't have cars, and the percentage of people who don't have health insurance. And over 8 redlined areas, neighborhoods in Durham, every single one of them was higher in all of these factors than the county average, except in canopy cover, where you'd want to be higher, they were actually lower. So we can see that because of historical and systematic racism, that people of color and who are living in these areas are more vulnerable to climate change than others in Durham County. So cars, what do they do? In addition to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, they also affect our air quality just that in the immediate area. And so 1 gallon of gas burning, which maybe for an average car is about 22 miles you may get, that's equivalent to burning 9.8 pounds of coal. Maybe we don't have a good sense of what a pound of coal is because we don't really burn that, but it seems significant to me. Exhaust from cars also includes particulate matter, which are those little pieces actually that you can see and that irritates lungs, carbon monoxide, NOx, which is a forebearer to smog. The transportation sector is responsible for over 55% of the emissions of NOx in the United States. And then carbon dioxide, of course, which is one of the major greenhouse gases. 1 gallon of gas is equivalent to 19.2 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent. So if you think about maybe a car using 10 gallons of gas a week or something like that, that really can add up. And these different pollutants cause cancer, they contribute to asthma, heart disease, birth defects, eye irritation, they affect plants and agriculture, so they certainly are a big problem. And land use. How much of our city, community is used up for purposes of cars, single-use vehicles, driving and parking? What else could we be doing with that property? I know there's a big issue with housing in general in Durham, but also especially affordable housing. And a lot of that has to do with the cost of land and the availability of land. And what else could we be doing with this if we weren't using it all up for cars? So here are some images of what 200 people look like in 177 cars. This could be any day you look out on 40 and see this pretty easily. This is the same people without their cars. So all that space is used up just with their vehicle. This is what those same number of people look like on bikes, how much space they take up. This is what they would look like on 3 buses. This is what they look like on 1 light rail train. And this is a little bittersweet to look at this because we won't have a light rail train to put people on, but you get the idea. Look at all that space, all that roadway that is being used for cars that could be used for lots of other things. Like what? So on the top, I love this picture of a bike rack that is in the shape of a car. And you could put 10 bikes parked in the same space it takes to park one average sized car. Down at the bottom, you can see how people have creatively reused some of those parking spaces for little parklets where people could relax or gather. For restaurants, we've certainly seen that during the pandemic more and more. So there's so many more better uses we could have for our precious space in our city areas than if we were using them for single occupancy cars. So what can you do? You can think about how you get around, whether that's commuting back and forth to work or to school or running errands. Are there other ways you could get there? So one option, of course, is to carpool. And it's easy enough to go to Share the Ride NC and sign up. And you say where you're starting and where you're going and what days of the week, etc. And they'll match you with other people so that you can have carpool buddies. And even if you don't do it every day, if you did it once a week or a few times a month, that still can all add up. And I should also say van pooling is another option if you're coming from an area that's very remote, or I should say very remote, maybe another county over, and there's a van pool that you can join. That's another great way to get there. And then you also don't have to drive every day or find parking every day. Of course, taking the bus is a great option too. The GoTriangle just announced that the buses will be fare free through June of 2023. So you can just hop on that bus and ride to your heart's content. I should say that masks are still required on buses in Durham, and I know they've enhanced the cleaning on the buses as well. And if you don't know quite how to get to where you're going, you go to GoTriangle.org and again, put in where you're starting and where you're going, and it will plan that trip out for you and tell you where to get on the bus, where to get off the bus, how long it will take you. There are apps now available where you can track real time where the bus is. So you don't have to stand out at the bus stop. If the bus isn't nearby, you can wait and get out there right when the bus is coming. There's Wi-Fi on the buses. So these are not the same buses they were 20 years ago. Definitely very fancy. This one in this picture I'm pretty excited about is an all-electric bus. And so this bus charges at night when there is electricity that's being generated for no use. If it doesn't get used, it just sort of dissipates. So they're using that energy to charge up these buses and drive them around emissions free. It's pretty exciting. I haven't been on one yet, but I've seen them around town and I'm pretty excited to get on one. Riding a bike is great. It's great exercise. It's a good way to maybe take some alternative ways. If you can get on one of the paths like the American Tobacco Trail or any of the other bike trails in Durham, you can see some nature out there. So it's fun, it's healthy, and it gets those cars off the street as well. There are maps available to show you the best routes. There are over 50 miles of dedicated bike lanes in Durham. There are programs, bike buddy programs and bike clubs. So maybe you're not quite used to biking. You don't know what's the safest route, or you don't quite remember the rules of the road. There are people to help you. And all of those things are available at GoTriangle.org, where you can connect with other people about biking. And I would like to mention the emergency ride home program. So if you are going to take an alternative commute, either on biking or on the bus or carpooling or van pooling, and you're a little worried, what if there's an emergency and I need to get home quickly? There is kind of an insurance program. It's free, called Emergency Ride Home. You go to that website that's listed there. That's on the GoTriangle website, and sign up ahead of time. So you want to be in their system already. And then if you have some kind of emergency, like your kid is sick and you have to pick them up, or your carpool buddy has unscheduled overtime and they're not leaving when you were expecting to leave, you can actually contact the service and they will send a ride for you. And it's free, up to 6 rides per year. So I definitely encourage anyone who's thinking about taking an alternative way to commute, to go ahead and just sign up. And of course, there's telework. It's what I'm doing these days since the pandemic, and I'm liking it more than I thought I would. It's actually really great to be working from home. It's very quiet when my kids are not here anymore. They all went back to school, so that's great. With all the things we have available to us now with Zoom and things like that, that we can really be almost just as productive or more productive really working from home. So if that's an option that your organization allows, that's great. It's not just as simple as going home with your laptop and working. There are definitely things you want to think through with that, but it is a great option and very low emission to commute from one room to the other in your home. If you do have to drive, there's some things you can think about that will reduce your emissions. There are things called trip chaining. So your car is the least efficient when it's just starting. And so you want to avoid starting kind of cold starting as much as you can. So if you have 3 places to go and you go out and do one and come home and leave your car in your driveway, your garage for an hour and then go out and do another and then do that again, you're really increasing the amount of emissions from your vehicle versus if you went out, did A, then went to B, then went to C, and then came home. Probably driving less vehicle miles, and also it's more efficient for your vehicle to do it that way. That's called trip chaining. Also avoiding trips altogether. So thinking really, do I need to go do that? Is there another way to achieve that same goal, things like that. And scheduling, just avoiding busy times because that's when you're idling a lot, where your car is just sitting there in traffic. And that also is very high emissions from vehicles versus when you're just going at a regular speed on the highway. Interesting to note, if you go into Google Trips and you put in where you're going and where you're ending, you can see that they have options for if you're going in a car or a bus, or if you're walking or riding your bicycle. And so if you click on those different things, they're going to give you a different route. You definitely don't always want to walk the same way you drive. There might be a trail or a more efficient way to go, or a bike path that you want to follow. So that's kind of fun to play around with. Google Maps also now will show you, when they show you routes to drive, there's a little leaf next to one of them, and that's showing you the most environmental choice for driving alone. So these other ones are still better, but if you are going to drive alone or even with other people, it will show you the best route for reducing your emissions. That's a new feature and pretty cool. And if worst comes to worst, this is the only way I think it's probably legal to drink and drive, is to hop on the biker bar and bike along. You got to get some friends with you. It'd be pretty funny to commute to work that way. But anyway, that is all I have for you. I thank you very much, and I'm happy to now have a discussion with folks. That's my contact information if you need it. And I am going to stop sharing. If I can figure out how to do that. Stop sharing. There it is. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tobin. That was very informative. Everyone, as we move into the question and answer portion of today's webinar, please type your questions using the Q&A option in your Zoom toolbar. It's a little easier to keep up with that than the chat feature. So if you have a question you really want answered, go ahead and use the Q&A option. If you could sign your name on there. We've had a few technical difficulties, so we have an awful lot of Paul Straws signed in today, and we know that they're not all Paul. So if you'd like us to know who you are when you're asking your question, and so that we can know who to address when we're answering, go ahead and sign your name in there. And if you'd like to ask your question of Tobin directly, please use the raise hand option in your toolbar. We will see those. So let's go ahead and get started. I see that we do have some of these questions already listed here in the Q&A. We have one Paul Straw asking, did you say that 1 gallon of gas is equal to 19 pounds of carbon emissions?
I did say that, and that seems like, well, how can that be? Because a gallon of gas does not weigh 19 pounds. So how does that work? And it's chemistry. It's chemistry, my friends, which I am not an expert in. But it has to do with the fact that the the emissions from burning are attaching. If there were any chemists in there, I urge you to step in, but attaching to other molecules like oxygen in our atmosphere. And so together it actually ends up weighing more than the gallon of gas did in the first place.
All righty.
Someone can fact check me on that for sure.
It makes sense. So Matthew Pate asks, which bus routes include the electric vehicle buses? Do we have that information? I know that I personally don't know exactly which ones have the EV buses, but if there is anybody who can answer that, please go ahead and chime in. And if not, we'll make sure that we get that answer to you.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone at GoTriangle does.
Okay, looks like we do have someone say that we have seen it for Go Durham on Route 3.
Okay.
And that was Len letting us know that. Okay, so we'll get some more information on that out to everybody. Another question from another Paul Straw. How has the increase in teleworking affected greenhouse gas emissions in the Triangle over the past few years?
Well, so we did see a dip in emissions during 2020 for a lot of different reasons. And unfortunately, we're seeing that tick back up. So that was due to teleworking. It was also due to a lot of other factors. There was industries that were, at least either shutting down or working less, a lot of different factors. I'm not sure, I don't have the data specifically teasing that out, but globally there was a reduction in emissions in 2020. And unfortunately, we've ramped back up.
All righty. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people were driving a lot less for a lot of reasons. Okay, so Ian has asked a long question. I'm going to go ahead and read this here. Ian lives in Durham near RTP, near the intersection of Ellis and Miami, works at Duke, and says there doesn't seem to be any great alternatives to driving to get to work. The bus line, the number 2 line is all right, but it doesn't come that frequently. The ride takes a long time. Then he needs to walk after being let off the bus. He's been cycling, but the ride to get to the Tobacco Trail via Ellis or Angier Glover is pretty tough without consistent bike lanes or trails. So does Durham or the Triangle have a plan for improving access in that area and others?
I cannot answer that. I would send that back over to GoTriangle folks. Unfortunately, I don't plan the bus system, so I'm not sure.
Okay, I know that we have been doing some changes in routes, and I know that there are plans, involving trails and access, that sort of thing. I don't have the details on me right now. I can go ahead and make sure that we get that to you. So thank you for that question. Looks like one of my colleagues is answering here in the Q&A, so we might have some information in there. I will go ahead and move on to another question while Kim is answering that one. Ed McLennigan asks, how is Durham planning to accelerate progress towards its 2030 greenhouse gas goals?
That is a great question. Electric buses are part of it. We are working hard to encourage people to take these alternative ways to get around, and also encouraging electric vehicles. So again, if you have to drive by yourself, can you be driving at least an electric vehicle? So putting electric vehicle charging stations, I know it's a big point of emphasis for the governor. And also in our new comprehensive plan, which is under development right now, and there are opportunities for people to chime in over the summer and react to what's being developed. A big part of that is designing our community in a way that reduces our greenhouse gas emissions. It actually has a goal in it, I believe, to be carbon neutral by 2050. And so that has to do with making it a more walkable, bikeable place to be, as well as increasing tree coverage and increasing density. So there's a lot of work that will happen through the comprehensive plan. And then a good amount of my work is actually working at the statewide level. So a big part of our community emissions does have to do with electricity. And there are things happening at the state, both, as I mentioned, through the governor's office, as well as through the North Carolina Utilities Commission that is going to change the way Duke Energy produces energy, plans for energy, incentivizes clean energy efficiency. And so being part of those discussions is really important. And there's actually going to be a hearing in Durham sometime soon. I'll put it in the chat where people can come and speak on that as well. So it's kind of coming at it from all different levels.
Alrighty, I think we have sort of an extension, an addition to that question from Ed again. Is Durham planning to use any of its federal infrastructure funding for new electric vehicle infrastructures like the public chargers, et cetera?
Some for that. There's also funding through the Volkswagen settlement where Volkswagen got fined a really big amount of money for cheating on their emissions standards. And that money is flowing down now through North Carolina. And so we have the ability to apply for some of that funding for electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So you will be seeing more.
All right. I know that we had a request in here from Len actually to put up the slide from the beginning. If you could maybe go back, Tobin, and share that so folks can look at it, the visual, the percentage of where the carbon is coming from. I know that was a really interesting graphic for folks. I think they want to look at it a little bit more.
Sure.
Alrighty, and while we're doing that, Arlene wants to know if there are any transit options for commercial enterprises. I think what you might be getting towards there is van pools, Arlene. So if there's you know, a little bit more information you can give us about your question, feel free to go ahead and put that in the Q&A so that we're sure that we're answering what you're looking for. But I know that van pool for, you know, for commercial groups of people who are you know, working in the same place, if you have a lot of people who are going to the same place at the same time, GoTriangle does have a van pool program where we're happy to bring our consultant and discuss how we can set that up with you. We have a partnership with Enterprise for the vans, for the vehicles themselves. So if you'd like more information about that, feel free to just send us an email. We'll have some contact information up at the end here so that you can contact us about what you might need and what you'd like to either get started at your employer, or if you are an employer and would like to do that, you know, feel free to send us an inquiry and we will love to come talk to you about van pooling. Let's see, Joanna Middleton is asking, she'd like to use her car less. She says, I've been riding around on an e-bike. I'd love to have more clarity on the rules about bringing an e-bike onto the bus. A lot of them are foldable bikes. She says, additionally, bus routes don't often work for the places that she needs to go. That's kind of the catch-22 in public transportation. She said it would be fabulous to have access to an app that provides really good multimodal trip planning involving bus routes and bike-friendly routes. Google Maps does do this a little bit, but not adequately. I know that this is something that a lot of people are looking for. So do we have any information on where we can find information about bringing electric bikes onto the bus and apps that would help us know exactly which routes are friendly for which modes?
Again, I'll have to rely on GoTriangle for those answers.
Yeah, I know that we work, I believe, with Transloc is one of our apps that will show you, you know, where the bus is, you know, if you're, you know, helps you plan your trip and will tell you where the bus is located at this moment. I'm not sure if currently it involves, you know, information on other modes. You know, or paths that you could take, the, you know, the best route to get where you're going if you have more than one mode that you're trying to use. But certainly I know that there is a lot of demand for that. So Joanna, we will do our best to get more information on that to you after the webinar here. She adds that she feels more people could be encouraged to use the bus if they had an understanding of how to navigate the non-bus parts of their journey. I know that's true for me. You know, transit can be a little intimidating if you're not a regular user. So the more information we can get to folks about how to, you know, how to navigate easily and take that kind of mystery out of it is, you know, a way to encourage people to use public transit. Alrighty, and Arlene has clarified a little bit on her question about commercial industries. So she was talking about more specifically about things like deliveries, getting supplies, etc. Are there plans, or is it included in that to for commercial enterprises doing their deliveries, getting supplies, etc., making that more carbon friendly, carbon neutral, etc.? Is there anything involved in our plans or Durham's plans for that regarding industry?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't do transit planning. I'm just out there encouraging people. So anything related to actual plans, other than the comprehensive plan, which I am involved in, I'm afraid, I don't know, but again, hopefully someone with GoTriangle or Go Durham does know.
Alrighty. And Arlene, we'll definitely look into that and make sure that we get you an answer. Alrighty, I'm just going through here a little bit. Okay, Shelley is asking, Shelley is letting us know that that Durham has significant subsidies they're offering to make it free for qualified trips. So if people are wanting to get into a van pool at their employers, there are subsidies in Durham that are available. So there's more information at gotriangle.org/rideshare. So if you're looking for ways to do a more sustainable ride to work, and but cost is a factor that you want to include, we do have some solutions for that. So go to gotriangle.org/rideshare for more information on that. Alrighty. And Tina is asking, says that we've heard that Transloc is not working because of the transition from 3G to 5G. Do you have a sense of the status of that issue? I don't personally. I don't do a lot of work with Transloc, but there might be, hopefully somebody, one of my colleagues might be able to answer that question. Certainly, I know that there were some issues with upgrading technology from 3G to 5G, things that were, I think it's the kind of the new Y2K, only this one actually had some issues this time. So we will hopefully get an answer on that for you, Tina. I don't personally know it right now, but I think that we might have somebody. I've got a lot of really qualified colleagues who are in here in the chat answering some questions. Tobin, what are some easy things that we can do as individuals to improve air quality and reduce our own carbon footprints? I know that it's a larger systemic issue that needs to be addressed on a large scale, but in the meantime, what can we do as individuals? What are some simple ways that we can reduce our carbon footprints with our travel?
Yeah, well, all the ways that I mentioned, obviously not driving by ourselves in our cars. If you do have to drive, be thoughtful about it. Plan out your trips well, trip chain if you can, avoid the busy times, don't idle. So if you're waiting for your kid in car line or whatever, turn off that car. If you are buying a car, buy either electric or at least hybrid, or at least one with the highest fuel economy. And also think about non-transportation emissions like lawnmowers. Lawnmowers are really, really dirty. Cars at least do have some emissions requirements and catalytic converters and things like that. And lawnmowers don't. They're really very, very polluting. I think I heard somewhere that using a gas lawnmower for an hour is something like equivalent to driving in a car to New York City or something. I mean, it's really, really bad. So I always go for no mow lawns. If you can turn it into kind of natural areas, mulch a lot, or put in plants that don't need to be mowed, or get an electric mower. That's what we have at my house. So we have a combination of letting it just do its own thing, and then also when we do have to mow, we have an electric mower. So that's not transportation related, but those are considered sort of similar emission profile.
And obviously, the energy efficient, windows and appliances, that sort of thing in your own home will obviously make a big difference.
And I answered a question in the Q&A that had to do with what the mix was in North Carolina. And so if you think about it, it's 39% is natural gas or fuel oil, 37% is nuclear, 22% is still coal, and 2% more or less is hydroelectric and renewable. So every time you turn on electricity during the day, you are, basically Duke Energy's turning up the gas at one of their power plants or shoveling some more coal in there. At night, not on cold nights, so it's winter and everyone is, trying to turn up their heat. That also is when they're turning it up. That's really where our peaks are. But in general, at night, when it's not a super cold night, they have to make electricity anyway because they can't just turn their power plants off. So if you are using energy at night, so if you're running your dishwasher, your dryer or something like that, that's very energy intensive, or plugging in your electric vehicle, you want to try to do that at non-peak times when they're using the cleanest resources they can. When everybody's got their air conditioning going and all that kind of stuff, and they're just turning everything on, that's when the coal gets used, and that's the dirtiest of the fuel. So thinking about timing is also really important.
Somewhat related to that, when we were talking about idling in your car when you're waiting for someone, do we know, are there statistics or studies out there that show how much idling equals in pounds of carbon? I know that anecdotally, I heard a long time ago that it wastes more gas to turn your car off and then back on, or that it's somehow less efficient to do that than to just leave it idling. So I think these are some of the ideas that we kind of all have in our heads. Do we know anything for certain about how that actually works?
Yeah, and I don't have those statistics right in my head, but I do know that it's about a tenth of a second or a second or something like that, where you've used more gas leaving it idling than you would have if you turned it off and turned it on. So if you're sitting, again, like not at a stoplight, you don't want to be turning your car off in traffic. But if you're waiting for somebody, or you're finding your directions, on your phone or something like that, or you're waiting for your kid in the car line, really for anything, any amount of time, more than even 30 seconds, you really should turn your car off. Now, if you have a hybrid car, those cars sort of generally turn themselves off and go to all electric while they're waiting anyway. That's a different, scenario than if it's not a hybrid car.
Okay, and so there is information out there for the finding on how long what idling does in terms of producing carbon. So I think that.
Yeah, and I'll also add, you think about it, you're getting 0 miles per gallon. So you could sit there and use up a gallon of gas and you've gone nowhere. You're getting 0 miles per gallon. And gas right now is at $4 a gallon. So you just wasted $4 on absolutely nothing. You got nothing out of that. And in fact, you created negative things because you put a bunch of pollution into the air. It's also not very good for cars. Cars are meant to be driven. They don't actually work very well when they're just sitting. So it's harder on the engine and things like that. I mean, get out of your car. That's the point of all this. But again, if you have to be in your car, and I know we do live in an area where it is not easy for everyone always to find alternatives or for every trip. So be thoughtful, use it as little as possible. And when you are using it, use it as smartly as possible.
I think that a lot of these things kind of come down to changing the way that we're thinking about stuff. It's not just necessarily like, oh, you're going to use gas or electricity, to turn the car on or off, but like, what are you actually using that gas for? It's a perspective change. I think that little tweaks like that can go a long way. Ed has a question regarding cycling and pedestrians. What plan does Durham have to improve safety for cyclists and pedestrians in the next 5 years? Can you speak to that, Tobin?
So there is a plan, a bike plan and a ped plan, bike ped plan. And that's all available on Bike Walk Durham. And there's also bigger plans for this. It's called zero. What is that called? Something zero. Somebody help me out here. Anyway, the idea is really looking for 0 fatalities on the vision zero. Thank you, Paul. I knew it was something with a 0. We're looking for 0 fatalities, whether those are pedestrian or biking or vehicle. So making really all transportation safer for everybody. And so that's not going to happen overnight, but it is something that is definitely being taken seriously by the transportation department. And then, as I mentioned, the comprehensive plan, that's sort of a big overarching plan, and then nestled into there are a transportation plan, our land use plan, all these different plans that are happening kind of almost at the same time. And all of that's going to sort of the same direction of making it easier and safer for people to get places without having to drive. If they are driving, to still make that safe, to make sharing the road safer for all different modes, complete streets, and reducing our emissions and protecting our environment and human health.
We have a good question.
I will add though too, that transit plan is also right now, still in the process of being developed, and there are opportunities for people to have their say in that. So people should be paying attention. And if you go to engagedurham.org, I believe it is, there's lots of information on the comp plan and the transit plan and the different places where people can get involved in that.
Thank you. That's a very good recommendation. Kwan Yu Chen from Oaks and Spokes has asked, says City of Raleigh is currently planning and implementing bus rapid transit through the main veins of the traffic pattern in Raleigh. Is there a similar plan in the works for the city of Durham?
Yeah, that's all part of that transit plan that's being developed. So go to engagedurham.org, .org, and you can find out all the information on that.
Okay.
.com, it's .com.
I feel like a lot of those, sometimes they'll switch over, but you never quite know.
I know, and I just type it, it's in my computer so often, I just start typing engage and it comes up right away. So someone put it in the, Paul put it in the chat. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, just to let everybody know, in case you're not monitoring the chat, there is a lot of these questions. We've got some great information and answers and links in the chat, so feel free to go through there. Maybe click those little 3 dots if you're seeing them, and you can save the chat, because there's going to be a lot of information. I think you'll be able to do that, but as a panelist, I have some extra power. So if you don't have that, I apologize. But go ahead, maybe copy it and put it in a Word document or something, so you can keep that information. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Kim, did you want to ask your question live on camera, or would you like me to go ahead and read it? I can go ahead and read this. Kim was asking, we can see that the increase in teleworking meant fewer cars during traditional commute hours. So how does that compare with the increased electricity that people are using in their individual households? So they may not be driving, but they're still using energy at home versus the combined usage when more people are working all in one place. Is there a big difference there?
This is a pretty complex question, and it depends so much on where you are, and I don't have data specifically for Durham other than kind of that big picture of, I can see residential energy. Well, I can't see residential energy use because Duke Energy has not been able to provide that information since 2018. So I don't know the answer in Durham specifically, I'll be honest. I'm hoping to get that information, and I can't wait to dig in when I get it. And that will all be posted on my website, which is greenerdurham.net. Just about to post our most recent greenhouse gas inventory update. That should be up in the next few days. Unfortunately, the county operations part will be very current, but the community one is still stuck in 2018. Yeah, so I'm sorry, that's a pretty complex question. I'm sure that there have been studies on that in different countries and around the world. Cars went down, traveling went down, residential energy use went up. Commercial buildings, some of them went down, but some of them didn't, because not all of them turned their systems off and didn't maybe change their, heating and air conditioning to overnight mode, and just the buildings kept thinking that there were people in them. So it wasn't as efficient as it could have been, because we were all focused on a few other things. I mean, all of us were, right? And so there was also a big concern about indoor air quality, understandably. And so there were some recommendations in the industry to actually increase outdoor air flow, which would increase energy use in these buildings, even if they were being underutilized, which is unfortunate. And then how much energy went up in people's homes depends a lot on their own home. I mean, my home is very efficient. We had 4 of us at home, my husband and I working, my kids doing school. It's well insulated. We have good windows. I'm pretty much a stickler for not turning the air up too high or too low. And our energy use, quite honestly, didn't change all that much having everybody home all day. I'm sure that's really true for a lot of other homes. People who don't have good insulation, then you have to crank that, heat or air up to be comfortable while you're doing work or school. So it depends on how efficient your systems are. So it's a great question. I'm sure there are some studies online about it. I don't have data specifically.
I can understand there's a lot of moving parts in that. And of course, with the office buildings, I imagine there was, at least one somewhere that their settings got left for a long, long time because we were only going home for 2 weeks, and
Yes.
2 weeks turned into 2 years before we knew it.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. All right. So I think we're going to wrap up here with a couple of some information that we've got here from GoTriangle, some opportunities to get involved. I'd like to point out that if you'd like to find more information on Commuter Rail, which is something that we are working on, go to Commuter Rail. Across the region, the plan is by 2030 to have, a commuter rail that's using the existing tracks. So this is different from the light rail project that you might remember from a few years ago, which is more like what you might find as a metro or monorail, that kind of thing. But the commuter rail would use existing tracks. You can find out more at readyforrailnc.com. You can sign up for alerts. It's proposed, the proposed track will go from Clayton through Wake County to Durham. So that would obviously be, another way to get to work, to get where you're going without driving by yourself, because the triangle is growing every day. More people are coming, and if they're all going to get on in their cars on 40, then we're going to have a bad time. And fortuitously, with our timing here, we're just a few days away from the start of May, which is Bike Month. And we have this year's Regional Bike Month campaign, the Bike the Triangle Challenge. We've got some information here for you. Keep an eye on your email for more details about Bike the Triangle Challenge. It encourages and rewards cyclists for choosing a healthy and active transportation option. So during the month of May, cyclists can earn points, and tracking cycling trips in Share the Ride NC. We're going to have drawings for some prizes. There's a lot of information. You can do that as an individual, as a pair, and in groups. So earning all of your points together. So you can learn more about that. There's some links here in the chat for that. And we would like to hear what you think about today's webinar. We'd like your feedback on that, and some suggestions on other content to address in future webinars. So if you complete this survey, you will be entered for a chance to win your choice of the books. We have 2 books available here, Switch by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, or Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is, about, those little ways we were talking about to change, to change your habits, change things little bit by little bit, which is a little bit easier than changing everything all at once. The survey, the link is in the chat, and the survey, you can complete that anonymously. We would definitely like your feedback, but if you'd like to enter the drawing, just please provide your email address so that we'll know if you win, how to contact you. We're going to do that drawing on Monday, April 25th, so next Monday. So go ahead and click that link, complete the survey, and if you'd like, we can enter you into that drawing for those books. Keep an eye out for an email that we'll be sending with the recording of today's session, but we'll also include links to the information on Bike Month and the Bike the Triangle Challenge. In addition to the challenge, some of the municipalities have, specific activities and a lot of fun stuff coming up for Bike Month in May. Obviously, the weather is going going to be great. Fingers crossed that the weather's going to be great after the pollen is done. And so there's a lot of opportunities to get out there, have some fun with people with your fellow cyclists. There's all kinds of different levels. So if you're not a big bike rider, there's something for you. So go ahead and keep your eye on your email for more information about that. I'd like to thank everybody today for coming. Thank you to Tobin, and her contact information is listed here on the screen. And thank you to the planning committee who helped organize the webinar today. Len Cohn from Town of Chapel Hill, Amanda Simmons from UNC, Carolyn Cagu from NC State, Michael Bailey from NC Central, and Kim Johnson, Callie Britt, and Paul Straw from GoTriangle. So if you'd like to see any of our past recordings and information from other webinars in the Mission Impossible series, go to gotriangle.org/mi. To check out our past events. We have recordings and information there as well. So thank you so much to everybody who spent time with us today. I think we got a lot of great information. And if you have any questions, if something wasn't answered, feel free to give us a contact, reach out via email. And we hope to see you next time.